This would be the second edition of our podcasting. And this time I will actually not use any background music because apparently that is something that doesn't really happen during, podcasts or something along those lines. And yeah, we have another participant here who would really like to talk about certain things. And I would definitely give him little shout outs. This is Daku. Daku, welcome into the podcast. And I would say I will allow you to introduce yourself to the community, and then you can start off with the topic at hand. How about that?
Sounds good to me. Hello, everyone. Most of you know me as Daku. I am the resident cleric here at the Cathedral, and the one that tends to the Cathedral ducks. And the topic of which I am bringing forth to the feet of our lovely chambermaid here is the topic of AI. And what I mean by AI is the rise of various media that have begun to utilize more advanced forms of AI, that being art, music, entertainment in general, whatever have you. Because nowadays you hear a lot of things from both sides of the aisle when it comes to AI. So one side loves it, one side hates it. One side thinks, it's the future, the other side thinks it's Skynet and we're all gonna die. So without further ado, opening up the topic, what do you think of AI in general, Tabby? What is your feelings on the use of generative AI in general before we get into more selective topics of AI? Do you think it'll be
Um,
the end of us, or do you
Thank you
think it
for
is a necessary
indulging
evil?
us on this shenanigan. But I do think before we continue, I forgot to mention that we are indeed going to take turns on who says what, so that everyone has a chance to say like the entire thing that they want to say, of course, in segments, not everything all at once, but you know what I mean, so that we can actually properly hear one another out. So that was something that I just forgot to mention. Now, to answer your question, I feel that generative AI is going to be a standard that we will have to live with. I do not think that there will be laws in whatever country or whatever global universal thing that will prohibit people from using it. That's well, it's the internet. Like literally anything almost goes on the internet. You cannot really delete things on the internet as well. So it will always be a thing. And it's something that we will have to live with. But it's definitely not exactly something that I'm thinking that people will tolerate it much. And the way that it has been progressing, though, is actually getting really scary to how quickly already okay quality. Of course, most other things are very obvious when it comes to AI, but like from when it started up to the point that we are now, I feel like things are really getting crazy to how accurate or how quote unquote real or legit generative AI is becoming. And hopefully that will not put our human artists, so to say, out of the game. But yeah, that's about my first take on your question.
All right, it's a solid stance, a very conservative view on it. I, for one, agree on the aspect that, in general, AI is becoming it's becoming sort of a necessity nowadays. In a general use of things, AI ranging from games to things like simple computing, what have you. Like you can program AIs to do basic, like coding, for instance. I have a small background in IT, and back when I did it, it was just scratching the surface of things like pre-coding to do certain things for you that generally a human would be responsible for. Um, but on the other end, I do also share the concern that in the long run, AI in general is sort of doing things in the way that the industrial age eliminated a lot of human type labor. But one thing that I feel a lot of people sort of push and pull about is the accuracy of AI, which is segueing me into my next question for you. Despite the fact AI is becoming more prevalent and scary, like realistic, I'm sure you've seen like those deep fakes and stuff like that, or like AI generated videos. It still has its inaccuracies. Do you believe that even if AI becomes more advanced, that those inaccuracies will be completely eliminated, or you feel that the general, like, artificial nature of it will make it, will give it some level of difference from, like, something that's real life?
I would say that it would definitely be it would definitely be something to the point that it will get so accurate that you would not be able to tell the difference on what is AI, what is real. I do think that there will still be ways to kind of foolproof it in terms of, for example, right now with like AI stuff, there's, by the way, a very popular trend, in my opinion, very sickening kind of trend, where influencers on TikTok, for example, go figure, would use a filter, an AI filter of having Down syndrome, basically, and therefore generate more clicks because people are fucking weird to go to their OnlyFans and expect, an actual person with Down syndrome to have like a super athletic body or whatever like that. Not that it cannot happen, but it just happens way too often. And there are things in there that you can see that it's definitely AI generated because of certain movements. Like, for example, if the person would turn around, like the filter is like off for like a split second, that you can like see the AI filter snap back onto the face of that person. So I feel like that would still be a thing where AI will, like generative AI like that, would still need to have a consistent view of someone's face to actually register, oh, the face is right there. Like if something's in front of that, it cannot recognize that as a face and therefore kind of like glitch out like that. So I think there will be still ways like that to kind of counter that or to prove whether or not something is actually AI or not.
Anyway, that's a fair stance, and I also like how you mentioned sort of the moral implication of it, with it being like TikTok and people generally using it as like a way to just get more views, even though they're using like a very serious like neurodivergency to sort of like sell themselves, which, is a perfect segue into my next question: the moral implications of AI. Everyone loves this one. I've spoken with a few friends about this, and they're kind of split on the matter. Some say, "Oh, it's just technology; it's not real." But at the same time, like there's from my stance, there's a deep moral implication to using something of this level, like on the level of deep fakes, on the level of voice generated AI. I'm sure you've seen a lot of those like voice generated AI like stuff. Like I've probably seen like ads on YouTube. I've seen a couple ads on YouTube that obviously are using voice AI to narrate their things. What is your stance on the moral implications of this type of use of AI? Do you think there's a fine line between good and bad? Is there a gray area? Or is it all just one big mess that there's no way to navigate, what's right and what's wrong? How do you feel about the morality of this? Maybe your
Um,
chambermaid.
I would say that the use of AI generated voices, like you can see a lot of those, especially on YouTube Shorts, for example, where it's usually always the same kind of voice too. Like it's always like the same kind of voice pack or something that they use, um, where they indeed narrate stuff. For example, like especially with the way that I wanted to start my YouTube channel, by the way, not to plug it, but is basically like a motivational channel kind of thing with like quotes and things that I wanted to send out to the world so that it may help them, guide them, and motivate them to do certain things. Um, but I didn't narrate anything. I just had like a text thing and like very soothing music with that going along with it. But that's very prevalent with uh, those motivational things. You will find so many of them where some very stock photos or stock images or videos, or even actors, for example, will be put like in some kind of a black and white background thing, very dramatic, and then it's like the most monotonous voice that you can hear, but it's usually always the same ones that you would hear. Um, for me personally, I feel like AI generated voices can be used in certain ways, but there has to be a reason for that because there are people, for example, that's like to be naming someone, Zentrea, for example, not that it's using AI, but we're getting to that point. It's kind of the same thing as basically microphone into TTS, TTS into voice again, which AI voices kind of work the same way, is that someone speaks in with their own voice, the AI kind of hears what's going on and then says it in the tones of whatever AI voice pack thingamajig that they got going. So I feel like for ideas, it could work, but and that's the same way that I feel about arts, like AI generated arts, is that I feel like it should be allowed to use that as a means to create an idea, but not necessarily to make the end product.
I agree. And second part of that, what's your thoughts on regulation when it comes to let's stick on the topic of voice AI in general, considering the accuracy of voice AI, like being able to mimic, actual people. I'm sure obviously, a bunch of you have probably heard, like, seen those videos on YouTube of like AI mimicking the voices of like famous people and whatnot. Do you think, in your opinion, that such things should be regulated to a certain degree, considering that there's an obvious, like, elephant in the room here, like it's, impersonating people for that instance. I think there was even a story recently about someone, I think it was a lady that was scammed by someone impersonating Keanu Reeves. I forget the story exactly. But yeah, what do you think? Do you think it should be heavily regulated, or do you think that something like it is what it is at this point?
Um, if I had to guess, it should be regulated in a sense that it doesn't mislead people to believing, like especially with like, popular people or like very important figures, so to say, so that people don't fall for that. But then again, I feel like at some times you would be able to tell the difference. But of course, maybe down the line in the future, things will be so goddamn accurate that you would not really know whether things are actually, that accurate or not. Um, but it should still be regulated, especially with like older people, especially. And I used to have Facebook, I don't have it anymore, where people would, like, especially older people, would actually believe almost everything that they see, like when it comes to art or voices or a mix of both, where people think, for example, just to put on a silly example, where people would actually believe that, um, like Neil deGrasse Tyson, for example, has said something which is absolutely not true because he's never said that. It's like with a video that was AI generated very accurately, but you could still see it. And then, of course, with the voiceover, that it gets to the point where it's really accurate. What I have seen though, is, and that's something very wholesome in my opinion that I've seen with not only like people or the AI mimicking people visually, but also with the way that they speak, is an older person, like an elderly person who has seen a photo of his wife basically come to life, which made him tear up or something like that. Like for reasons like that, that would be really, really cool to still have like a vivid memory visually that you can just have it on the fly, so to say, because of something that you no longer have. Like in that sense, it can be very heartwarming. Of course, in a sense that it is for good purposes, but if it is for malicious things, then I feel like people should just try to use common sense and figure out for themselves, is this legit or not?
Yeah, and sort of pivoting towards chat here, Merak mentioned Neural Viz. I've heard of Neural Viz before. It's like a multimedia thing that is it Monoverse, which sort of has to do with what you mentioned, Tabby, about that individual who was able to see like a picture of their loved one come back, be animated in a way. I think that in instances of generative AI, it has positive application, like extensive positive application, especially for the elderly, specifically in like the areas of like memory loss. Yeah, America, reality TV. There's a lot of positive applications, and I agree that in the method of like helping people, AI is definitely a positive boon on the world. But like with all things, you know, all it takes is a few bad apples to fuck up the whole bunch. And I think that a lot of the misconceptions with AI is that it's only used for evil or it's used to trick people. I mean, even you, Tabby, even people have assumed that your voice isn't actually your voice. I mean, let's pause on that real quick. How do you feel about that? That your voice is mistaken as AI?
I mean, I can imagine or I can see why. And in a lot of circumstances, I would also be inclined to believe, and this is also exactly why I hate my own voice. And the thing is with that is there's also other VTubers, for example, that I have seen that actually do use like an AI thing. But then you are like very, very much able to tell like something feels a little bit too much robo here. And I can get that with my voice as well. But in my opinion, it shouldn't really matter for what reason for what reason people tune in. But it does really bother me that people say that I'm AI. I would try to joke about it, where I'm like, yeah, I'm going to, I see all of your browser history, beep boop, and all that kind of shit. But to me, it doesn't really matter that much. So I'm basically just here to make people happy. And whether they want to believe my voice is AI or not, that's entirely up to them. I have no say in that.
Oh, I have a theory as to why a lot of people, like the first timers at least, when they first hear you, they assume it's AI. And the reason for that is that you have a very nice voice. Whether you believe it or not, the reason why people, I believe, assume it's AI is because it's a lot of the AI voices you hear, on the web are very like smooth and like calming. You have sort of that same cadence about you, and that's sort of nowadays. That's why people might misunderstand that you're an AI voice behind the chambermaid outfit. See, Chonker agrees, Dragon Blades agrees. A lot of people will agree in the community. But yes, for those that are new here, or for those that are going to watch the VOD of this, the individual sitting to my right is in fact 100% real. She's not a Terminator. She is not a destructive AI. She is destructive, but only when she's kicking my ass in Smash. But moving on now. Moving on. Um, let's get into something that, you know, I'm sure we all enjoy video games. Yes, video games, and the use of AI in video games. And I'm not talking about enemy AI, like, dumb and stupid enemies. I'm talking about AI being used to basically produce, like, games in general. Like, I'm sure if you've seen videos on Star Citizen, or not Star Citizen, what's that game that came out with the star name? Starfield, is that it? Starfield. Starfield, that open world, open galaxy Bethesda game or whatever. Yeah, that's the one that had a large use of AI in it, especially in a lot of the storyteller aspects, I've been told. What are your thoughts on like AI being used for stuff like that, like taking the human component out of game making? You think that's a good thing, or do you think that's a recipe for bullshit?
I would see I would see this as a way for games to be made quicker, so to say. And of course, it goes with art or videos as well, like we have discussed before. But what I do believe that I have seen is a game that is so small in terms of size because AI is basically processing the game on the go so that it doesn't really have a large, volume in like gigabyte or something like that to actually play the game. Like it literally procedurally generates the game for you as you're playing the game. It was like a boomer shooter kind of thing. I forgot what it was, but in terms of making games easier or lighter, so to say, to process, then AI could really help with that. But of course, it takes away the way that people make games now, as in, actual people making games the way that they are supposed to be, how things are sequentially supposed to play out. Um, but yeah, it's a bit difficult, really. And of course, if people are gonna continue making shit games, then they will have to cut their costs somewhere, one way or another, potentially replacing people with AI to make AI produce the graphics, for example, as well, procedurally do things for them. Because like the newest, what is it? The newest GPU of NVIDIA has that kind of thing where there's like always AI generating bullshit that is going on that does a lot of stuff for you. That I'm thinking they will also do that with the games, and I think that's already a thing anyway. So it's just gonna get worse and worse in that regard. But it could also be better than when it comes to the accessibility and how quick the production of said games could be, even though it's a lazy approach.
I agree. I agree. Let's hone in on that topic a little deeper. Uh, in the aspect of level design nowadays, a lot of those newer type games, especially shooters or those you see a ton of them, like dungeon crawl games, use procedurally generated AI to sort of give you a different experience every time. My question to you, and this is more so like on preference, and this is a question to chat as well. Do you guys prefer procedurally generated like scenarios where the experience is different every time? Or do you prefer more catered level design? Like in your case, Tabby, you're a fan of the boomer shooter era, especially Doom. The what's your take on that? Do you prefer more catered level design, or do you like things to be different, like generated as you go?
To me personally, I would actually say that having a more catered thing has the ability to really tell a story the exact way that you want it. Like basically you like with a movie, you have a director that says things should be going like this and no other way. But with AI, I feel like there's still things that can change things somewhat. I don't know how far. Of course, that's all within the limitations of what the director of said game then would allow. But I feel like there's a more human connection when you can really feel like someone else put their heart and soul into this game. So I would rather be up for that. But when it comes to other games, um, where things are AI generated or procedurally generated, is good for things that have a lot of replayability, like an insane amount of replayability, so that that AI thing can basically make the game feel fresh every single time that you play it. But that is, again, like, for example, with the roguelites, for example, that would make sense. But when it comes to actually telling a story, is something along those lines, or story-driven things, or multiplayer games for that matter, I feel that procedurally AI-generated things should not be a thing. This to prevent like any kind of random bullshit or balancing issues to be, to be at play here.
Yeah, that's true. Things like level crafting for perfect example, arena shooters. Arena shooters are built around, the arena, and depending on how that arena's made, it can either be balanced or in favor of one side or the other. Personally, I'm of the same camp as I prefer things a little more linear when it comes to my games. I like crafted scenarios, things that, a person or a team took time to sort of put together and sort of detail for you what the story is. Like old school RPGs, stuff like that. Like it feels like it's meant to be there. Whereas, while I do enjoy the occasional procedurally generated scenario, there's something about it that just sort of feels impermanent. I don't know what it is personally. It just feels like a cheap thrill at that point. Like it's a one and done. Exactly, Chonker. Like I know people have their own preferences, but like Tabby said, there's something very human and very like tangible about a map that is specifically catered to what you're playing it for. Which, another great segue into a new topic, which is sort of like the same thing as gaming, art. A very hot button topic because I know quite a few artists, and they're all pretty rallied around the idea that AI art is evil. Well, I agree that it is. There needs to be some regulation in mind. Do you think AI is a necessity for making art moving forward?
Um, Sorry, I was just checking the chat. Um, I don't think that AI should be a necessity for people to move forward. I think that we should be encouraging artists to do more or to do better because, like, not that they are not doing a great job already, but more like to really showcase the importance of non AI art, so to say, right? And I feel with AI generated art right now is that it is too easy for literally anyone, including myself, as I have been tinkering with AI a bit myself. Like it is way too easy to do something with that, just like a whole bunch of text and then generating things for you. However, there have been people who have been able to master said AI generated arts to really make super accurate things. I don't know how they do it, but it is absolutely crazy to what people can do when do you really ask for something specific and they will be able to do that without like any kind of like without any kind of trace where you would know like, oh shit, this is AI generated. But the it's just way too easy, and especially me being a Rule 34 connoisseur myself, there is so much fucking AI generated, like NSOW contents that is just being pumped out that are literally like literal pages just filled with AI generated stuff. And it honestly pisses me the fuck off that there's just so many because it just floods so many things where other artists make genuine arts on that platform, but they all get just deleted basically, or like swept off of the pages, because like all this AI generated stuff gets in the way because of how many gets posted. So it's really crazy though. And I have also seen people training said AI to really replicate someone else's already existing art style, and that is very wrong in my opinion, because it then takes away all the hard work and effort and energy and love that artists has been honing for themselves, that they have put into themselves to really get to that point where someone with literally almost any kind of computer can just replicate that and just like sweep away all those years of effort and hard work and dedication just aside like that. And that is wrong in my opinion.
I agree. I think personally, I believe AI art is theft, in my opinion, because in order for it to generate the images that it's generating, it needs a baseline. And what that baseline is that it takes images that already exist out in the web and it compiles them to sort of build whatever you're asking for. Like in the case that you were talking about, all the virtual titties on R34. It's taking the already drawn titties that someone has painstakingly molded, perfect pair, and have like compiled it with all other pictures of that nature to give you friggin' super titties or whatever. Sorry, I'm just looking at chat here, what Chalker's saying and Dragon are saying. Yeah, and that goes back to the whole thing what Tabby was saying, is that you can never replace a real artist because there's things AI can never replicate, and that's sort of the passion that an artist has. And every artist has their own little quirks about them when they're making art, and that's what makes them unique. And when it comes to AI generating art, it's sort of a cheapened, you know, 2-bit version of that that's been smashed together and melded with someone else's art to sort of give you what you're asking for. In that same vein, what are your thoughts on AI art being used for gaming? Because there's been some topics floating around about, oh, well, some companies are using AI to sort of generate art for their games and stuff like that nature, this, that, the other thing. Like, do you think it's sort of getting out of control in the gaming industry that they're actually considering things like generative AI art to produce for their video games? Or do you think they
Feel
should just be
like
able to do what they
there
want?
should be a limitation on how much that you could be using. As in, there are games that I have played. For example, there's one game, but even with just regular fast food simulator, there's also the Cornerstone or Corner Kitchen fast food simulator that I have been playing, which do use AI, but it's very obvious that you can tell that I feel like it's just a way to have some kind of a visual thing to have on Steam so that you have a visual image of the game, so to say, um, to then just push out and not like pay someone to do it. It's literally just there to cut the costs on promoting your game, so to say. Not necessarily that AI art is gonna promote or like lure in a lot of people, but it's still a visual thing to see on what's going on. But there should be a limitation on that. And again, the primary reason why people do it is just like we have discussed before with the AI procedurally generated coding for games, that it is just literally a way to cut on costs and or people to make an end product, in which case should not be the case in my opinion.
So that brings out another interesting question. So I'll give you two scenarios, and this is just sort of pick your brain on how you would see this, and this goes for chat as well. I'll give you a little brain tickler. Say that you have a small gaming company, like real small, like a few guys, and they're making a game. They don't have a lot of money to produce a lot of the things a AAA would. Would you assume that in their case, using some AI to generate some images for their game would be okay since it's a small sort of indie company trying to get off their feet versus like a AAA company like Hack Division pouring millions into giving digital artists to make high-end art for their game? Would you think it's okay for them to do it, or is it still like on the same level of like a big company using it just to cut costs just because they want more money?
I would honestly believe that it's better for people just to commission an artist to actually do it for you. For example, I have made, well, not made, I have commissioned a shitload of people who made artworks for me. You know, like with the intro video, like all those artworks and thingies that have been made there. Um, and it isn't as pricey, of course, depending on how many you need. But on average, it was around 120 euros for like one really fucking good artwork. So I feel like for something like that, I feel like you should be like, if you really give a shit about your game, you should dedicate actual stuff to it. But using AI is still just a very cheap way to get away with just getting things started. Now that I think about it, there's not a game called Demonologist that also uses AI generated arts, not only for like the Steam page photo thing, but also in game where like even for those smaller images, I feel like you could just commission someone and like especially for smaller images, it should be very cheap to do so. But yeah, it should not be an excuse. If you really give a shit about your game, you should not use some kind of excuse to cheapskate your way through if you really care about, you know, the end product.
That's true. That is very true. Let's see, what does chat have to say about this? Nate Slays, I think it would be okay for a small. It's a fair assumption. I mean, it's a tough sort of like foreground to look at because when it comes to a small company, like very small, typically they don't have a lot of money, so I can sort of see the side of like, well, they don't have a lot of money. It's just sort of a placeholder till they can, sell copies on the other side. You have a big company like EA, they have millions of dollars, they can commission as many artists as they need, and it's just a cost cutting measure at that point. Um, Captain Ultima. And yeah, is it ethically right or wrong? I mean, I think at the end of the day, it comes down to the individual's perspective. In the case of like putting it in and then patching it out, understandable. Like you don't know if your game's gonna do good. If you're really small, a lot of indie games fall flat on their face, unfortunately. So I can understand, like, in that respect, if you're just sort of like testing the waters, it would make sense not to invest too much money into that if you're not certain if the game is really going to take off. And fucking hell, Quan. I mean, yeah, that human touch, yeah. Uh, but was it Chonker? Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's all about keeping real artists alive and afloat because and like we talked about in the beginning, AI is phasing out a lot of things, but one of the things that I hope it never does is an actual human artist because you got to have that human touch when it comes to drawn titties, right, Quan? But moving on to the next aspect of AI, and that is something I'm sure we're all familiar with in some way. music, AI music, and I'm sure you've heard a lot of it nowadays. A lot of that top 50 stuff. AI has been on the rise in music for a very long time. And what is your thoughts on that, my dear chambermaid? Because I understand you have a very refined taste in certain types of music. What are your thoughts on the utilization of AI to assist in music making? Think it's a good thing? Think it's a bad thing? Do you think it's whatever, fuck it, as long as it sounds good?
It's a bad thing. It is a bad thing because of you can for the time being you can really tell whenever something's AI generated, and YouTube is filled with those. YouTube is YouTube playlist that I usually try to use so that I don't use copyrighted music, so that no shit gets like muted, because Twitch will actually mute copyrighted stuff out of your VODs. There's a lot of YouTube playlists, or just like these long videos basically, that are just completely AI generated. And you can really tell whenever something is really AI generated. And I could just pull up a couple right now. You would be able to tell. But already a telltale sign would be like if you would look up, like I'm going to do that right now. If you would look up like jazz music, so let me just look that up. So jazz radio, for example. And I'm just gonna scroll down a little bit. And usually you would be able to tell, yeah, especially here, I'm already seeing things where even the art itself is also just AI generated. That's when you just instantly can tell. Maybe I should pull this up real quickly onto onto the stream rather. So you guys can kind of see what I'm talking about. Let's see here. So I'm just gonna see if you guys can see it. I'm being stupid right now. It's gonna move me to the side real quick. I think, let me see on Streamlabs. Okay, looks okay. But yeah, for example, that Cafe Jazz 1940s that you see right there, that thumbnail, 100% AI generated. But there's, see, like playlists like these that you can definitely tell, like, and yeah, for example, here as well, you can just see, and there's so many of them. There are so many of these that just use AI generated stuff that you would just be able to tell which ones are AI, which ones aren't. And you can really hear it with the music instruments as well, because that's the beauty of music instruments, because they sound so pure and so cool. And when you fuck up, when you fuck around with that, you are really easy. Like you can really tell, especially if you are in a music scene, you can really tell whenever something is AI generated. So I feel like it should not be a thing to really do so, to really make things for you. It's the same thing with art in general. There was also another music artist that I got in touch with to use one of my previous intro songs, basically way before I had the Chambermaid thing going on, to which he was testing AI as well. And it was really scary to how things can go, especially with electronic music. And that's where AI has a bit more of a leeway thing in there, because it is easier for electronic music to just be generated like that, because they don't really use authentic music instruments. But that's why with jazz music, for example, you can really fucking tell whenever something's AI generated. And I like jazz.
Yeah, Junker makes a wonderful point. It has passion. Not to say that any other art lacks passion, like drawing and stuff like that, but when it comes to things like music, there's a certain passion that you have to put behind it if you're really serious about it. And while playing devil's advocate for a moment, while I do understand that some people lack the talent or the ability to create music in certain ways that AI sort of gives them that ability. You know, there is the lack of passion and that human connection, which is the ultimate, you know, the ultimate opposition to the usage of AI in any aspect of society nowadays, is that when you eliminate the human aspect from something, like the what's the point in it? You know, I mean, granted, like the perfect answer to that is, you know, the endless stream of mobile games you see on your mobile app. A lot of those are AI assisted games that are just put together, which creates sort of a cheap thrill versus meaningful experience. Which, you know, brings me into the next topic of AI. And this is just in general, moving away from the sort of like focus topics. Do you believe AI is more so used for that sort of cheap instant payoff versus, you know, something meaningful that has taken time? Or do you think AI is a good tool in in the respect that it's used responsibly to sort of like save on labor where it is necessary?
As I've mentioned before, it should be the AI. I feel like AI should be a thing to visualize an idea, right? Not to make the end product of it. So, and it's not something that we're going to be getting rid of anytime soon. That's for sure. And we'll see how things go, but it has to be regulated to the sense that people don't lose their fucking jobs. But it's already happening that way, especially with artists. But again, like AI, in my opinion, for example, the same with like movie editing or something along those lines, that it should be a way to visualize an idea to see like, I'm trying, like, I have an image in my head and I kind of want to visualize that without needing to pay someone to do so. Just to have an idea, like a concept, so to say, then that would be absolutely okay. And then you can send that to, for example, a professional video editor or producer or whatever the fuck to be like, hey, this is more or less the idea that I had in mind with like this scene happening in that way, then that would be okay. But if it's just to be like, oh, I'm just gonna enter a prompt and that's it, then that's just being fucking lazy and just, yeah, not really giving a shit about the product that you want to achieve. And I feel like in at the end of it, where like in another 10, 20, 30 years for that matter, that things with AI ever keeps going the way that it is now, that, for example, video editors, artists, music artists will all lose their jobs basically. No one is going to need them anymore. And it's already the case. It's already like that. It's just that you could very much tell whenever something is AI generated. There's literally things where, for example, subtitles are being made on videos because the person who made that video uses AI for the transcript, basically, so that they don't have to manually add subtitles and things like that. They just, toss it in there and just does literally everything for them. But also sequentially made videos or video editing is also, I've also seen people like do that. And I'm thinking that's another person that basically could have made that video for them, but they can't because AI replaced them. And that's a very scary thing. So that's why people who are creative are going to be in a world of shit, so to say. If things keep going the way that it is now, then yeah, there will be a lot of creative jobs that will lose their opportunity to shine, which really sucks. And to add to that, just to continue on this topic with AI stuff, even VTubers, there is a literal AI VTuber. I forgot her name, but it's like this little schoolgirl-esque looking character. I don't know what it is. That is basically AI driven, but there's still a person behind that to kind of pilot things to see like if things work fine, so to say. But there are already VTubers for that matter that are already more or less AI. You're somewhat yet area, what Chalker said. So there's still a person kind of regulating things to make sure that everything works fine, but it is still an AI thing that's going on. So even VTube is going to get replaced at some point. But then there's still the thing that AI will never be able to replicate whatsoever. And even in the Matrix, they even said that AI or the machines will never be able to recreate a human emotion whatsoever. And that's something that only humans, and some animals for that matter, can pick up. And that's something that we should be proud of, so to say. So that's also something that it will be like this war, so to say, this civil war figure of speech of the human emotion and AI generated stuff.
What if we're already in the Matrix and we don't even know it? Ooh. But those are perfect talking points, Tabby. I, for one, also agree that the way things are going, unfortunately, AI is just becoming a fact of life at this point. As much as we want to rage against the machine, it's too convenient for mainstream to give up on. And with that being said, given the fact that artists are finding like whatever, like artists, drawing artists, music artists, what have you, voice actors, given the fact that they're sort of being pushed out of their industry by C3PO, do you think that they should learn how to adapt with AI and how to utilize it in order to stay relevant? Or should they keep trucking down the same road they're going to try to like outlive it? Or do you think at this point, they should consider other other forms of employment? Your thoughts on that? Because I've heard a lot of different opinions. Some say to learn AI to sort of adapt with it. Some say pick a different profession. Some say that just keep doing what you're doing through hell or high water. What do you think, Miss Chambermaid? What would you do?
I would try to find a way to make it so that you do something that AI can never replicate. Whether it is through art, whether it is through voice acting, whether it is to video editing, anything along those lines, there should be something that you can do to make it really unique to you that even AI cannot replicate that, of course, for the time being. But again, considering how things go in the future, AI might be so bullshit that it can just instantly do things that someone else has been working on for decades, so to say. But yeah, it's really difficult. It's a really difficult matter to be like, hey, you worked your fucking ass off to get to this point where you are now. Well, too bad. Now anyone else, literally anyone else can do it. It's like that one part of that one scene in The Incredibles where, I forgot, like Syndrome was his name or something, where he is like, when everyone is super, no one will be. That's basically the point that we're going at right now. That no one is going to be super. No one is going to be that unique to them that everyone else, literally anyone else, can be the exact same way or have the exact same skill as everyone else has. So and that's really dangerous. That's really something that makes it so that people cannot express their passion in the way that they see fit and kind of be forced to do another profession in order to make a living still. And that is really scary because you're literally sucking out the joy and passion of people to do something very boring and mundane just to be able to live. Whereas people right now, there are many who live off of doing the things that they do, as in with arts and like, for example, VTuber models and along those lines. I am 100% confident that it will get to that point where AI will also be able to make, like, not only draw VTuber models, but also do the rigging for them, how things are supposed to move. I'm 100% sure that is going to happen. And that really sucks for the future of the VTuber industry. But aside from VTubing, all of those skills that people have been training all the time will basically be for nothing. So that's why there has to be a way for people to still differentiate themselves from AI, that even AI cannot replicate that. What it is, I don't know, but something has to be done about that in that regard. And I know that people will be able to figure something out. I just don't know what the solution is.
Yep, the future looking pretty dystopian when it comes to AI. Some people see it the rosy shades, others see it as the coming of the machines. All hail our metallic overlords. In that same vein, on the topic of how fucked or unfucked we might be in the future if AI gets super smart, have you heard of AI girlfriend and boyfriend experience? You have not. Okay, so uh, it's a trend that started back, I want to say 2018, 2019, when sort of those AI chatbots started to kick off. There's this thing nowadays where people are quote unquote getting into relationships with AI generated individuals that respond to them in a similar manner as their significant other. What are your thoughts on that? Just general thoughts to start it off. How does that make you feel?
I'm sorry, I'm just like having these random thoughts about like how people will perceive that. But it is indeed, I can understand why, especially like it's actually goes in line with the topic that we discussed beforehand, as in with the previous podcast, that mental health in men is going just down the fucking drain because of how society is today. So they're also looking for a quote unquote cheapskates solution to their loneliness, for example, by just having some kind of a AI thing, even though they very much are aware of it being artificial, it's still something that they can use to relieve themselves of a lot of stress, not necessarily in a sexual way, but I feel like we're going to get to that point where we will be able to fuck robots basically. It's going to be like that. Whether you want it or not, robotics are already a thing. If the future is going to develop in a way that it is now, in a positive sense, in a non-apocalyptic way, but a more futuristic way, like sci-fi kind of thing, then 100% we are going to be able to have fuckable robots giving birth to humans. That is something that is going to be happening 100%. If, of course, we don't go to the apocalypse line of like nuking the shit out of one another because of some stupid debates or some stupid conflict between humans. But again, if we go to the sci-fi routes, yeah, we are going to be banging robots, especially if the way that society is now with how picky everyone is on in terms of relationships, then it is 100% going to happen. Like if you look at the birth rates, for example, in South Korea and Japan, for example, primarily those two, the birth rates are so abysmal that in a couple of years, let's say a couple decades actually, that's like in 2030, 2040, something along those lines, there will be so many old people and little to no young people because people don't really, people don't really date anymore. People are so fucking picky. People are so busy with themselves and just want the easiest of life possible that they don't care anymore about reproducing. So that's why humanity, if it keeps going that way, humanity will find a way that you do not need humans anymore to actually produce children. So, like I said, we're just gonna have bangable robots now.
Juan's like, hell yeah. Yeah, and it's unfortunate that that is sort of the trend. As speaking as a male of the male species, it is very understandable and not something that I could really fault anyone for leaning into is that the difference between a human connection and a robotic connection is that in a world that is constantly judging, constantly belittling, constantly pushing you aside, AI will never do that, but that is also a very dangerous and slippery slope, in my opinion. While I can understand that, you know, people get lonely and they need sort of that validation, that unbiased connection. At the same time, it creates more of the same, in my opinion. It closes people off to each other more. Technology, like, have you ever seen that movie Wall-E, where like they just depend on machines for everything at that point, even raising their kids? That's sort of the way I see things. Like, I get it, I understand it, I won't judge it, but at the same time, it's hard to not see the writing on the wall. And yeah, Dragon Blades, you make a perfect point. The more the internet, moving off of AI for a moment, but the internet and how connected we've become has only made us grow apart physically, because instead of going out and meeting people, whereas it's good for those who can't do that, that might not be able to. It's also created sort of this societal norm that, the this is all there is to life. Like, me being here before you on the internet and God knows where, talking to you. This is preferential to like meeting someone in real life, where it is what it is. Whatever your preference is, whatever your preference. But at the end of the day, the more connected we become as, a world, the less connected we also become as people. Boston Dynamics. Jesus Christ. But yeah, I guess my closing sort of questions and statements would be, if you were given the opportunity to have a robotic, like, significant other that you could model in any way to be anyone in the world, would you or would you not? I've asked this question to a lot of friends. I'm curious what you would say. Now, just to preface some things, this robot can basically be modeled in the image and personality within reason of any person in the world that you want them to be. Would you take the opportunity to indulge in that, or no, it's a robot, it'll get it away from me?
Okay, you're giving me a shitload of power here. Now it depends. Am I able to model it in any way, as in, even if it is, for example, a VTuber by any chance?
I already know where you're
You
going
know,
with this.
I'm just, I mean, I would really, I would really, shut up. I no, but on a serious note, I would actually not be comfortable with that. I would actually not be comfortable with that, because individual is, um, each individual is unique in their own way, and I would never be able to replace anyone, like, for that matter, and that would be so unfair and so wrong, though, to actually have that. But if I would have to pick, it would definitely be Zen. No, I mean, no, I would no, I would actually be, maybe. Does it have to be a fictional person, though, or non-fictional person?
It can be fictional, non-fictional. Doesn't
Actually,
have to be a
having
real
someone as
person.
Roberta would actually be kind of cool, because then, like that, I'm not actually replacing anyone in the real world. Like, that would be really cool to have, like, Roberta here with me. Oh my god, that would be super cool. But no, like, even no, 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 I'm not gonna do that to Zen. Zen is her own thing. But yeah, I would pick Roberta. That's a safe pick.
See, that's exactly what I fucking said.
Because you like women that can kill you, is that it?
Yeah, I have a type. Oh, Merrick, that's a whole nother fucking can of worms altogether. That's a whole nother podcast.
Marek,
But
I'll
yeah,
take 20.
just shut up and take my money. Yeah, I agree. Even if I had the power to mold it in whatever image I'd want, even jokingly being Roberta, I still would say no. Because with me as a person, there's, you can't replicate a relationship with a real person. Someone who was in a very extensive, long-term, it's not something you can just look at a machine and be like, oh yeah, that you're let's be together forever. At that point, it just feels hollow. So I guess the moral of this story, boys and girls, and my non-binaries, and what have you, is machines are a tool to be used. AI is a tool to be used, not a replacement for the real world and real people, as much as real people can fucking suck sometimes, as I'm sure many of you can relate to dealing with that. Especially those who have to deal in the service industry or stuff like that. Specifically, a McDonald's, perhaps. But yeah, it's okay to talk to people. It's okay to not always agree with people around you. That's what makes us human. As long as you find someone or a few people that share your interests and you feel comfortable enough to talk to for more than a minute, that's all that really matters. With that, that's about all I wanted to talk to you about regarding AI. I had other topics in mind, but I think I'll save those for another time because they're pretty extensive and I need to sort of go over them as far as talking points because yeah, oof.
All right. Um, okay, Dagu, thank you so very much for your input on the AI topic, the topic of the future. Who knows? But I really appreciate you reaching out to me that you wanted to talk about this. And of course, always want to welcome whenever you want to have another session or another go with whatever topic you might have in mind. Um, Normally, at the end of every podcast, I also like where I always allow people to promote themselves for a minute. But if you don't have anything to promote for yourself, or if you have anything to promote, you can do so. So I will give you a timer. So I will just grab my phone real quick. I will set a timer for a minute where you can literally say, well, in this case, whenever you want, of course, within Twitch's TOS, for the entire minute to kind of say your last bits on the podcast thing before we bring this podcast to a close. So I will start a timer um, in due time, but are you ready? I'll then do a countdown and then you will be ready to go.
Alrighty, let her rip.
All right. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining this podcast with us today, where we talk about the dystopian future that awaits us should our AI overlords take over. We hope you had a wonderful time. And as far as promoting something, as I am just a talking head that lives in the dungeon whenever Tabby wants to let me out, I'm going to promote Tabithash. Yeah, she's sitting right here to my right. This is her stream. She's the boss. I'm the dancing monkey. Please, after the stream, feel free to go and watch past VODs of her other wonderful streaming content on her YouTube channel, youtube.com/@Tabithash. That's Tabithash. You'll find a lot of lovely videos, most of which have to do with her torturing the shit out of me in certain games like Smash Bros. And that one
That's
time in
it,
Project
Daku.
Zomboid.
God damn it. God damn it. Out of all things that you could be picking up, fuck it. Out of all things that you could be saying, of course you have to do that, you fucking pit. But thank you though. Thank you for the promotion, I suppose. But yeah, that's basically it. I do hope you enjoy the podcast, everyone. And of course, Daku, I hope you enjoyed as well. Always more than welcome. And with that, I would say thank you so very much for tuning into today's or the second episode of Chamber Chatter. And remember that I love you all for being you.
I love you guys too.